Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where today we're going to take a look at three movies that are not just coming together but taking shape. And two of them I'm very excited about, and the third, it made a lot of headlines yesterday when this remake was announced, and I think that it's kind of more of a good hard lesson about the business, and that's why we're discussing it. All right, so let's get started though with the two that I think look really good. Now, the first, I wasn't excited about at all. The Dark Tower, Stephen King's The Dark Tower, has always kind of been on my radar. It's a very popular series of novels, obviously, but then it became a comic book also at Marvel. And so when I was at Marvel, I remember covering some of the releases of The Dark Tower, wanting to talk that comic up to try and, the comic book industry is always, like any medium, trying to bring in new fans, and the Dark Tower comic was something that was trying to do that. Now, obviously, Hollywood has the same idea, and there have been a couple of incarnations of this in development. As you might remember, Ron Howard was very aggressive with the Dark Tower, very ambitious, and wanted to do a series of movies that coincided with the television show that would fill in the gaps. Now, that didn't work out, but it's, Hollywood isn't going to give up on an adaptation, especially because Hollywood loves adaptations, especially of a popular book from Stephen King, and it's finally coming together. Now, the director, well, let's talk about the reason this is in the news, which actually makes me finally excited for the movie, and that's that Matthew McConaughey has been offered a lead in the movie, and the Wrap says he has a choice between playing the hero or the villain, but some reports are coming in that he's only been offered the villain, but all reports say that if it is a choice, he's leaning towards the villain, which I think is the right choice. But anyway, as I'm sure many of you are thinking of right now, Matthew McConaughey turned down another villainous role recently, and that was for Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I would guess probably to play perhaps Chris Pratt's father. Maybe he didn't want to play the father of, arguably the biggest star in Hollywood right now. I think Matthew McConaughey is like, look, I know I'm older than Chris Pratt, but let's not make me play his dad, okay? And I have to say, if I were Matthew McConaughey's agent, I would agree with that. I would say, we're not going to take this. But I'm glad he didn't, because this project is perfect for him. Now, the Dark Tower is basically Lord of the Rings as a Western. I think is the best way to paraphrase it. And, that sounds okay. I love Lord of the Rings, but Lord of the Rings itself kind of Lord of the Rings me out with the Hobbit films. And then, of course, we have the upcoming Warcraft, which also looks like it's, I guess there are a lot of different franchises that want to assume the Lord of the Rings mantle, because those movies were quite profitable, no matter how tired we might have gotten of them. They made a couple of them made $1 billion, and they all made close to $1 billion. So but when you say to me, well, do you want to see a Western with magic, a genre Western with magic, but where Matthew McConaughey stars as they call him the Man in Black, as a cowboy sorcerer? Now I want to see it, right? And I think that's what Matthew McConaughey brings to the table. Dark Tower fans, definitely interested. But how about those that don't read Dark Tower, right? How do you make them want to see the movie? And the answer is Matthew McConaughey in a role that is perfect for him. And I also think this underlines some of the problems with Warcraft, in that they didn't bring in any stars. Obviously, that's a decision to save money. And I'm sure to some extent Blizzard's saying, hey, Warcraft, the game is the star. We've never needed stars for our games. We have our own BlizzCon convention. But I think that when you want to bring in a new demographic, a new level of fans who aren't familiar with your property, you need something they're familiar with, right? And Hollywood is just not enough. You need to have some kind of talent, be it behind the camera or in front of the camera. And Duncan Jones isn't particularly well known either. And I'm hoping this movie, Warcraft, changes that, but I'm getting a little nervous after seeing the first trailer that Duncan Jones's career will not materialize as I had hoped. But speaking of directors, the director on The Dark Tower, I think, is very risky. And his name is Nikolai Arcel. He's a Danish filmmaker, and he hasn't really made that many movies, but the reason everyone's paying attention to him in Hollywood is that he made A Royal Affair, which of course was an awards nominated, Oscar nominated film. I think it might have actually won, come to think of it. But A Royal Affair, It's like the Kon-Tiki directors who went over to do the new Pirates movie. I think that these guys definitely have a good grip on cinematography and sumptuous visuals, but I think that doing visual effects is a whole different animal. And I think that it's frustrating to see, and I think, Duncan Jones has done visual effects heavy movies himself, like Source Code and Moon, but obviously, Moon was pretty low tech, obviously nothing at the level of Warcraft. So you have these filmmakers who are very talented, no doubt, cutting their visual effects teeth on a major property. And I really feel they should go and do that somewhere else, right? They should go cut their teeth on something else. Because, look, you can't keep waiting for the second film in the franchise to be really amazing. Kind of like with Bryan Singer and X-Men and X2, right? I think it's become so competitive in the franchise arena, you don't have the benefit of a learning curve with the first movie, because you have to compete with movies that are on much further down the line. So I think this director gives me serious pause for concern. I would love to see more magic on the big screen. I talk about that all the time lately. Where is Medivh in the Warcraft trailer? I want to see more Scarlet Witch. I want to see magic in Doctor Strange. I don't think I'm going to get it, but that's what I want to see. And I really want to see Matthew McConaughey be an evil cowboy sorcerer with all that entails. So I'm curious, were you on the Dark Tower movie train before? And are you not tempted to get on, considering Matthew McConaughey will star? Do you agree with me about this being a good situation where a star power is necessary for a film and helpful? All right, so let's move over to another movie that also, The Dark Tower, is set for 2017. This other movie is set for 2017. And it's because it's been pushed back from 2016. That's because Gambit, Simon Kinberg, the producer on that movie, has acknowledged that because of Rupert Wyatt leaving as director, which we discussed, that whole Rupert Wyatt, will he work again? I don't know. It's going to be unlikely. But now the movie is not going to make its October 2016 release date, which I think is really a bummer. And I think that, they needed that I think Fox really wanted that in their, late in the game in 2016, but now they're going to have a 2017 contender. But the movie is shaping up so well that perhaps it'll be worth the wait. So what's the latest information? Well, Doug Liman, we've talked about a couple of directors for this movie. I think all very good. I think Channing Tatum is an excellent businessman and a very good producer. Just look at the way the Magic Mike movies have come together. And I particularly enjoyed the first one, but the second one was really strong as well. I think that Channing Tatum is, again, as I said, a good businessman. And I think the best Hollywood talent are good businessmen. I think it's important because, now that everyone's a free agent, there's no studio system, it's largely up to you to shape your career. But anyway, Doug Liman is one of the names that they were considering to direct Gambit, and it looks like he's very close to a deal. It looks like he's going to be the one to do it, and Gambit couldn't have gotten a better director. Not only did he do Mr. and Mrs. Smith, but he also did recently Edge of Tomorrow, that fantastic Tom Cruise, Emily Blunt movie that, didn't quite gross as it could have. I think that's due to both Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt, but it was a very well-made movie. So I think Doug Liman is the kind of director that not only can deliver a good Gambit movie, but thanks to all this great work that he's done that fans are aware of, particularly Edge of Tomorrow, a lot of champions for that movie in the fan community, I think that he's a director that can get fans excited about Gambit, and that's something that Gambit sorely needs. And now it has Léa Seydoux from hot off of Spectre. Well, kind of, Spectre's doing well at the box office, but I think there's not a lot of buzz about Spectre. But anyway, Simon Kinberg also outlined the fact that Gambit's going to be a heist movie, and I think that's perfect. He's a member of the Thieves Guild. He's actually in line to lead the Thieves Guild, and of course, Belladonna, Léa Seydoux's character, runs the Assassins Guild, and those are the two guilds that really run New Orleans. And I think that's perfect. And they're calling it a sexy thriller. Chris Claremont, who no longer can write comics, unfortunately, but created this character, is doing at least the outline for the script, and I just think it sounds like it's coming together really well. Channing Tatum is not only starring but producing, and then Reed Carolyn, his producing partner, is also on board. And again, I think these two guys are pretty savvy, and I think they have a pretty good idea of Magic Mike 2 did not do particularly well, which is unfortunate, but I wouldn't count them out just yet. And particularly because the way the picture is coming together here, I think it's very impressive indeed. So I think Gambit looks good. I'm just a little sad that it's delayed. But what do you think? Are you getting any better? Do you feel any better about Gambit? I know a lot of you just refuse to support this movie because it stars Channing Tatum as Gambit. But I'm telling you, he was like one of the only good things in Jupiter Ascending. I think he can do it. All right, and he wore a Gambit t-shirt to Comic-Con. He loves the character. That's cool. Who doesn't want to hear Channing Tatum's Cajun accent? All right, so the third movie, the one that's like, really? That's the Memento remake. And this actually managed to trend on Twitter when it was announced yesterday because people were so aghast at this idea. So here's basically what happened. I want to preface this by saying when they had the whole situation with Watchmen, and everyone was really upset about the way Alan Moore was being treated with the Watchmen prequels before Watchmen, etc. J. Michael Straczynski came out. He works a lot in comics, also in television. He's done some movie stuff, and he had something really smart to say. And he said, look, in this business, in the entertainment business, you sign the best deal you can at the time that you sign it, right? I mean, you get, basically what he means is sometimes you don't have a lot of bargaining power. You're not a big star early on in your career, and you just get the best deal that you can to move your career forward and become that big star who later on will have bargaining power. Although, as Christopher Nolan knows, it never gets any easier because I think he's lost some of his bargaining power after Interstellar underperformed. Did it have ridiculous expectations? Yes, but he had met those expectations in the past with both Inception and the final two Dark Knight movies. So I think that the expectations for Interstellar were astronomical, but I think they were not unjustified. So I think Christopher Nolan didn't lose all his ground. Obviously, he still is a name that gets the fan community a buzz, and therefore Hollywood a buzz, and he's working on a movie for Warner Brothers. But he's going to produce Akira. I think he should direct Akira, but that's a whole other conversation. But anyway, I think that Christopher Nolan certainly is in a better place in his career today and would not sign any deals where a movie that he had made would be remade by somebody else. But Memento was the first movie that Christopher Nolan ever made that was like an actual official movie, right? I mean, he did, I think, one other film before that, but Memento was his first official picture. And he was just happy to get it made. And it really worked out well for him. It instantly made him a named director in Hollywood. It instantly got him a cult fan base. And, he rose to the top very quickly. I mean, that was only 2000 when he made that movie. But anyway, he didn't own the rights to it because it was the beginning of his career, and he signed the best deal that he could at the time. So that actually was something that was owned by Exclusive Media Group. And Exclusive Media Group, as is the case with many small unknown companies, eventually decided, screw it, Hollywood isn't working out for us. Let's sell this library, get a bunch of cash, maybe go do something else, maybe just leave the business. So that's what they did. And they sold their library of titles to Ambi Pictures, basically to just another company that's kind of like a bottom feeder. But you know what? When you're starting out your career, you're dealing with the bottom feeder. So Christopher Nolan had to deal with Exclusive Media Group, and Ambi Pictures now has the rights to his film. Now, in this deal were also Cruel Intentions, which Ambi is making into a TV show. That's maybe a pretty good idea, I think. Donnie Darko, Rush, and Sliding Doors. Now, as you can see, those are the biggest movies they got, along with Memento. So you can kind of get an idea of what Exclusive Media Group was selling. So Ambi clearly paid for this library to get these titles. And Memento is something now they've announced they're going to remake. Now, I can't blame Ambi Pictures. They bought this. They paid money for the rights to these movies. So they want to get their money's worth back. I think that maybe remaking Memento isn't the best idea. Maybe expanding the universe, making a sequel, maybe that would be a good idea. But to remake Memento, I think is a pretty nervy and dangerous decision, especially considering how aggressive Nolanites are, right? The Nolan fan base is, this is the group that gave death threats to critics on Rotten Tomatoes who dared to give The Dark Knight Rises not a good review. So I wouldn't want to take on Nolanites by remaking Memento. Also, I would wonder what director would be willing to take on Memento and try and to walk in Christopher Nolan's footsteps. I would think that would not be a great start to someone's career, being like, I want to be the next Christopher Nolan. I know I will upset all of his fans and probably make a movie that everyone's going to say isn't as good. So you're going to have to either get someone who just wants a paycheck gig and is, kind of like the director equivalent of these production companies, Ambi Pictures and Exclusive Media Group, or you're going to have to get someone who's such a bold artist that they're like, this is my chance. It's too good an opportunity. I'm going to just go so in a different direction than what Christopher Nolan did, and I'm going to make it my own, and I'm going to take a gamble, and then I'm going to get my name associated with Nolan's and maybe be able to have the same meteoric rise if I can pull it off. You got to risk big to win big. So I think I'll be interested to see how this picture comes together. I mean, I think it sounds like the move that Ambi would do, but again, I'm curious to see which direction it ends up going, with just a paycheck director, like a music video director. So the kind of director I'm talking about, or if it's going to go with someone who has a really strong creative voice who decides, I know it's sacrilegious, but Hollywood's a tough business to get into. You can't blame me for, taking advantage of this opportunity. All right, so anyway, those are the three movies that are coming together. I'm very curious. What do you think of them? Do you want any of them to come together? Will you watch any of them once they come together? And let's get on to the viewer question. This is from Homemade Smash. And Homemade Smash says, this was from Friday. So it says, Happy Friday the 13th, Grace. Love all your content. And then just gets right down to business. It says, who decides what companies get merchandising rights for a film? And do you think excessive merchandising can ever hurt a film? Thanks. Lots of smiley faces. And he didn't use emoticons. He used like all the letters. XOXO, made hearts with, like the greater or less than sign in 3. It was very cute. So Homemade Smash, thank you. Great question. Now, who decides what companies get merchandising rights? Well, there's a whole division, especially now after George Lucas made so much money off of the merchandising rights for Star Wars, which at the time didn't used to be worth anything. So Fox was like, sure, you can have the merchandising rights, George Lucas. And then it was like one of the worst decisions ever made in the business, and certainly was a game changer. But so now every studio has divisions that overlook merchandising. It's very, very important to them. So they have deals. Often a studio will have a long-standing deal. For instance, like for a while, DreamWorks had a long-standing deal with McDonald's. Their movies would be featured in all their Happy Meal toys. So you know that whenever a movie comes out, you'll see that merchandise pop up with this company, right? So that's one thing that happens. So also you've seen Hasbro has a deal for Marvel toys, for instance, and Disney Marvel was able to say, if you speak of DreamWorks, if you buy DreamWorks Hasbro, we're going to take away all of our toy deals with you, our long-standing toy deals, and you will never release another Marvel movie toy again. So Hasbro backed away from the DreamWorks acquisition deal. So you can see there are often long-term deals in place, right? And it's advantageous to everybody. The studio gets a cut, the toy company gets a cut, and of course the stores sell the merchandise and they get their cut as well. But here's what I think. I wanted to talk about the second part of your question, because that's what basically it's very simple who decides. But I think it's not so simple as to what level of merchandising can hurt a film. I wouldn't say it's excessive merchandising, but I think it's the quality of the merchandising. All right, now there's something like Frozen, where there's like so much fan fervor over the property that people just want anything that has Frozen on it. And so Disney is one of the best merchandisers out there, and they're also very, because they have such strong characters and animation. They have lots of brand deals, and because they have such a wide audience, and also they target kids, and kids of course buy a lot of merchandise. I think fanboys and girls and kids buy the most merchandise of anybody, and of course Disney has cornered both of those markets at this point. But I think that there's something that's so popular you can slap the logo or the characters and anything and you just get it out there. But I think for other properties, you have to really take a lot of care to understand the fans and what they want. Now, I think you don't want to put out junk. I think that's really important. And I think that, sometimes when you have the thing we just discussed about just slap the logo on stuff, it can lead to some junk. But in that case, the fans are so into the property, they don't care, right? But I think sometimes if people aren't totally into the property, you can put a lot of junk out there and people just they go into the store and they're like, that's a lot of junk. And it just, I think, hurts the film. Also, it doesn't move. If the stuff is on the shelf and it's not selling, I think it puts a negative spin on the way people perceive the property, right? Like I have to tell you, every time I walk into the Disney store, and I've been going a lot lately because they opened one up near me and I was like, I love the Disney store. I'm really surprised that they have all the Star Wars merchandise toward the front, but I never see anybody buying it. I don't see anything sold out really. And so I'm always like, man, they cannot move this stuff. Like I don't see anybody at the checkout with Star Wars merchandise. Maybe it'll change once the movie comes out. But it does affect how I feel about the property. However, I think inversely with Frozen, I was like, I didn't like Frozen, as you remember. But I'm like, wow, look at all those people with armfuls of Frozen merchandise. They can't stop coming out with new Frozen merchandise. Oh, everybody loves it so much. This property brings people so much joy. How can I hold a grudge against it, right? Still don't like the movie, but don't have a problem with the property. So that's very important. Also, I think it's important with merchandising to have a wide appeal, not to just hit a single demographics, right? You want to make sure that someone who normally maybe wouldn't buy your a merchandise for your movie would be like, oh, well, I normally don't buy it, but that's really cool. I guess what you want to have things that appeal to people not only in terms of what they purchase, but also on price points, right? You want to have the high-end items, and you want to have the items that just anyone could pick up, like a pencil or an eraser or like stickers, so it doesn't cost a lot of money. A good example of this is actually Tiffany's. It's a famous jewelry store. It's in the iconic film Breakfast at Tiffany's, first in the iconic novel by Truman Capote. But Tiffany's is really great because if you go into Tiffany's, anyone can walk into Tiffany's and walk out with something. Tiffany's works very hard on their price points. And so this is just a good thing for merchandising in general. You want to make sure that nobody has to walk out of your store not by choice, with no merchandise, not by choice. You want everyone to feel good, everyone to walk out with that. And I think the same can be said of a movie. You want everybody to be able to pick something up if they want to. So you have to have a lot of merchandise, you have to hit different demographics, you have to hit different price points, and you have to make sure that it moves. And that also relies on the ad campaign for the film as well. Like if they're not getting people too excited about Star Wars because they're keeping it so secretive, maybe they shouldn't have pushed so much merchandise out front. Maybe they should have waited till the movie came out, and maybe they should have done maybe merchandise that, played more into the nostalgia factor. I'm not quite sure. I think I have a lot of questions about the way Star Wars has run its campaign, and we will know soon enough if it was right. But I think there's a lot of ifs with that campaign. But that's my thoughts on merchandising. I hope that clears up some of your questions. Your questions, Homemade Smash. Thank you for such a great question. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories and that viewer question. What do you look for in merchandising? When do you typically buy merchandising, etc.? And also, when does merchandising change how you feel about a film? And then also be sure to let me know what you'd like to see covered tomorrow and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.